Thank you for that. I think we can all agree that in order for there to be some sort of meaningful change, we're going to need more commitments from our allies around the globe, and also be taking constructive steps to combat these atrocities. I think the hypocrisy is, and the irony is, when you look at the Arab world, who obviously many of the Sunni countries share a religious heritage with the Uyghurs. And I want to, it was mentioned earlier about the Belt and Road Initiative by Ms. Ki Kalor. I want to read a statement here that's in an article from June 2nd, 2022, titled, "Why Muslim Countries in the Middle East Support Chinese Atrocities in Xinjiang." Here's what it says. Chinese Belt and Road initiatives projected to grow to over $1 trillion by 2027 are especially important for Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and the UAE, all of which have signed comprehensive strategic partnerships, one of the highest levels of Belt and Road partnership with China. Consequently, each of these states has firmly defended China's oppressive actions in Xinjiang. In addition to publicly endorsing China's Xinjiang policies, all of these countries have deported Uyghurs back to China at Beijing's request. The defensive motivations and behavior are clear. Egypt and Saudi Arabia want to continue the Belt and Road initiatives with China. I'm going to submit for the record, Mr. Chairman, 3 articles. One from Time Magazine from March 24th, 2022, titled, "The Arab World Isn't Just Silent on China's Crackdown on Uyghurs, It's Complicit." Number 2, from The Hill, December 9th, 2022, "Arab Nations Should Press China on Uyghur Muslim Abuses." And thirdly, the article I just talked about from the Institute for the Study of Democracy, June 2nd, 2022, "Why Muslim Countries in the Middle East Support Chinese Atrocities."
Without objection, it'll be added to the record.
Thank you.
The gentleman's time has expired. Ms. Sherrill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And once again, an incredibly heartfelt thank you to Ms. Haidawaji and Ms. Siddiq for your truly moving testimony, to hear about the unique vulnerabilities of women being exploited by the genocide taking place in China right now is really heartbreaking. And quite frankly, equally heartbreaking is hearing about how young people are at these camps. I have 2 teenagers, and to hear that 17 and 18-year-olds are being exploited in the same ways at these camps is horrifying. So thank you for your testimony, for the courage it takes when I know you must fear for family members and relatives at home. Thank you as well, Mr. Turkle. Again, horrible to hear you may never see your parents again. And the courage that you've shown as well, it really, I think, humbles all of us here tonight. So thank you. We heard tonight some testimony about the Chinese TikTok company and how they have participated in the surveillance architecture of the state and have been complicit in the genocide taking place against the Uyghurs. And yet, at a hearing earlier today, when TikTok CEO Chu was asked about this, he said, quote, "I'm here to discuss TikTok and what we do as a platform." It seems as if a more complete answer would have included what TikTok does as a platform to help architect the surveillance state, which has been involved in these atrocities. But it's not TikTok alone. We know that Chinese technology companies, many of which still do business here in the United States, are providing surveillance and tracking technology that not only enable the surveillance state in China, but also for would-be autocrats across the world. So Representative Pfluger and I have legislation, the Uyghur Human Rights Sanctions Review Act, that would give President Biden the authority to sanction these companies under the Global Magnitsky Act, and I think my colleagues on this committee could be instrumental in getting that legislation across the finish line, and that's something I will work to do along with them. We have taken steps, important steps, as we've heard, like the Uyghur Forced Labor Protection Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, to boost incentives to reshore our supply chains and reward those companies that do the right thing. But we all know tonight more must be done, and I look forward to working with the members of this committee to finish that work. So, given the secrecy of Beijing's human rights abuses in Xinjiang and the difficulty in finding information on the labor used to produce goods for export, how can the U.S. government, how can we do better at making sure we are further boosting insights into how certain products are made in China and making sure that we have a supply chain that does not involve labor from Xinjiang or exporting that through third-party countries back into the United States? And Mr. Turkle, Mr. Zentz, if you'd like to reply.
First of all, Congresswoman, thank you so much for your sympathy with my family situation. I wish this circumstance will change, and I will welcome my mother back to the United States to meet her American children and American grandchildren. She has 5 U.S.-born grandchildren, but she only met 1 so far. It's painful. It's extremely painful. To your question, a couple of things need to be taken into consideration. One, as I alluded earlier, this bill has faced some challenges. It is almost disturbing to hear the folks who are advocating cooperation with China on climate crisis wanted to water this down. That's a wrong approach. Laws made to be implemented. We need to fully implement this law. And then the other thing that we need to look into is close the loopholes within China. We've been receiving news regarding human trafficking, transporting Uyghur workers to inland China. We're also hearing change of labels, country of origin. Technology should be able to address that. I recently spoke at the Tech Expo organized by CBP. They're talking about using DNA technology to trace. So technology and also consumer advocacy is also very important.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Dr. Dunn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to echo the sentiments of all my colleagues in thanking Ms. Hatawaja and Ms. Saduk for their testimonies. Speaking here, reliving your experience takes immense courage and strength. Americans and people around the world need to hear your story, so thank you very much. As the chairman mentioned, we stand ready to help and build off some of our earlier progress. During the 117th Congress, we passed H.R. 6256 to ensure that goods made with forced labor in the Xinjiang Uyghur region of China do not enter the United States market. Just 3 months ago, we passed H.R. 4785, the Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act, which passed the House with broad bipartisan support. This bill will address human rights violations committed against Uyghurs and other minority groups in the Xinjiang region. Still, there's a lot more work to be done, and I thank the chairman for his leadership in fighting this egregious human rights abuse. Forced movements, forced labor, torture, brainwashing, genocide, all at the hands of CCP. The list goes on. Personally, I'm particularly disturbed by the Chinese Communist Party's forced organ harvesting practice. As a physician, I know the miracle of organ transplantation. It's life-saving for many people. For those who choose, and I emphasize choose, to donate organs, they're doing great service to others. However, the need for organs is much greater than the number of donations can meet. According to the United Network for Organ Sharing, more than 100,000 people in the United States need an organ transplant, but last year just 43,000 transplants occurred. So how is it that in China, wait times for hearts and lungs are significantly shorter than in other countries? In fact, articles suggest that patients are even given their dates of surgery well in advance. This seemingly unlimited supply of organs tells us the organs are harvested on demand, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the record statement of Mr. Ethan Gutman on forced organ harvesting in China. With no exception?
With no objection.
Thank you. In May of 22, a Tom Lantos commission hearing, human rights investigators uncovered that detainees about 28 years old in the camps were undergoing health checks that included blood tests and cross matches for organ harvesting. According to this report, some of the detainees are forced to wear color-coded bracelets after the health check, and they vanish, they disappear from the camps in the middle of the night. These facts and details paint a horrific picture, but don't take our word for it. On the screen behind me and on the poster in front of me is a published interim judgment of the China Tribunal. I'd also like to enter this into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you. In December of 18, the China Tribunal pronounced its final judgment on organ harvesting in China, concluding that the tribunal's members are certain, unanimously, and sure beyond a reasonable doubt that in China, forced organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience has been practiced for a substantial period of time involving a very substantial number of victims. That's simply horrifying to a surgeon. Must tell you. Ms. Saduk, you spoke of one of your students who disappeared. And I invite you to enlarge on this story of any other things you know about these people from camps disappearing. And by the way, the rest of the panel, if you have insights, I invite you to lean in as well.
Mən şu cəza lageri turub atqan vaxtlarımda aşağıdakı məni apırıb əkildiğən sağ şoförlərini anlağandım. Ürümçi Miçivəngə joylashqan nəhayət kən köləmdəki zəhər taslatqızış orni ishki organ soda orniga olinib ketgan.
As I worked at the concentration camps, I overheard that the policeman who drives the car and transports people, and that the policemen were talking to each other. They said that there was one drug rehabilitation center in Michuan, Urumqi, but later that place turned into organ transplant center.
Well, these are horrible things to contemplate. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It shouldn't be lost on us that we are having this hearing on the close of a 3-day visit that President Xi has taken to Moscow, standing with Mr. Putin, proclaiming their distrust of the United States while Mr. Putin's illegal war in Ukraine takes place, while more crimes against humanity are being inflicted. And it was a convening arranged under the guise of brokering peace in a conflict whose pretense is universally known to be fabricated. The gross deception that comes from a leader whose actions in Xinjiang, our own State Department across multiple administrations has determined to constitute crimes against humanity and genocide. Mr. Turkel, do you have any reflections on why President Xi would be in Moscow working to align himself with Mr. Putin at this time, in this moment, even as we're having this conversation here this evening?
So from just observing the meeting and news reports, he wants to tell the Chinese people that he is still welcomed as a key international player by showing up there. Previously to Central Asia, as you may recall, that he received highest state honor in Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, despite the fact that the Kazakhs and the Uyghurs, so as Uzbeks, essentially from the same family. So that he wants to show to the domestic audience that he is still a player in the international community. As you know, the Chinese government has been somewhat isolated in the last few years. And then two, he wants to to find a way to improve China's economic condition. They are not doing well. So those are the two observations. And also, before the Putin's re-invasion of Ukraine, as you may recall, last February, they signed almost unconditional love letter. So that need to be displayed. So that's my take on the visit.
Yeah, and it's certainly exceptional and profound to have Ms. Hadawachi and Ms. Siddiq testifying before us here in Women's History Month on the atrocities that are taking place in these labor camps. And as we saw on the eve of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we were able to decouple to an extreme extent from Russia. We were able to break off ties. And something our committee is wrestling with is this economic consideration. And we are well aware, based on tonight's hearing, more so aware of the Forced Labor Prevention Act, creating the presumption that goods produced or manufactured in Xinjiang or by entities with certain ties to Xinjiang that are made with forced labor unless determined otherwise. And we need to figure out, and I'm wondering, Mr. Turkle, if you could help us to identify the potential vulnerabilities in the existing law that allow the CCP to get their exports around this Uyghur Forced Labor Protection Act.
One of the things in that has not been helpful is the $800 de minimis that they need to be addressed. Because of that, some of the consumer products are still available. Just to search.
A lot of things cost less than $800.
Yeah, DJI, and on Amazon, you will get at least 3 dozen hits. That is a sanctioned company because the drone is apparently less than $800. So we have to close as simple loopholes as that. And also, I genuinely want the business community to do some soul checking here. We need to tell them, not on my name. We are complicit in this and this is the same business community just making us feel that we're seeing IBM 2.0.
Yeah. Well, to our survivors, you may not speak our language, but we have heard you tonight, and we will take away on this committee hearing that we will no longer accept the unacceptable. We will no longer allow economics above all else, and we will fight for truth, for justice, and for human rights. Thank you, and I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing that we haven't talked a whole lot about tonight is the why. Why does the CCP round up and persecute the Uyghurs? Mr. Turkle, is it merely or entirely because of their religion, their Muslim faith?
To the Chinese government, stability is a paramount concern. Starting 2012, 2013, all the way to 2014, they identify liberalism, Islamism, or Western religion, foreign religion, Western influence, posing an existential threat to the CCP leadership. So in order to do that, in order to tackle that problem, they come up with this preemptive policing. So the way that they're describing the religion in particular, like likening it to thought virus, infectious disease, is very telling. So to the CCP government, the Uyghur people's ethno-religious identity is a virus that will impact, that will become a bigger problem if the Uyghurs remain to be a distinct ethno-religious group. Same thing is happening, similar thing is happening to the Tibetan people, but the most vulnerable community under that, the Western influence pushback effort is the Christians and Muslims. So that shows to the Chinese a sign of disloyalty and potential political threat.
As you know, earlier today, the CEO of TikTok appeared before a congressional committee. After the committee, his COO, one of his top executive said that the criticism of TikTok coming from members of Congress on both sides of the aisle was rooted in xenophobia. One congressman, Jamal Bowman, even went as far to agree and said it's racist to suggest that we would ban TikTok or to attack TikTok. I wonder, Mr. Turkle, is it a strategy of the Chinese Communist Party to deflect criticism by calling that criticism racist, or to talk about Asian American hate, or to use that type of rhetoric and innuendo to deflect criticism overall?
Certainly. They're also taking advantage of American ignorance. They're just presenting something available on the App Store that you can download and watch short videos, but they're missing the point. It's intoxicating American minds of the American youth through the fake news, through disinformation. Just case in point, genocide denial. The guy that I alluded earlier could not even acknowledge that this government he's affiliated with through his job is committing genocide. So American people need to know this company is one of the biggest facilitators, enablers of the ongoing genocide.
Yeah, and it's not helpful to use that type of rhetoric, right? I mean, it diminishes the whole point of speaking out against genocide and doing something about it. You would agree with that?
Yeah.
Would you say that the Biden administration has downplayed Uyghur genocide?
To Biden administration's credit, starting from 2020, there are a number of significant decisions were made. For example, acknowledging the previous administration's genocide determination was a huge relief for a lot of us. And also something significantly done was the coordinated sanctions in March 2021 with Canada, UK, and European Union. That should be the new norm. I would like to see that. And I also would like to see the Biden administration continue to raise this as it did in 2021 at the G7. But what is not acceptable today is that some officials in the Biden administration trying to tone down human rights criticism on China's ongoing genocide to get a Chinese cooperation in the climate crisis. But we're not seeing this issue on the same page. Climate crisis is not a top priority for the Chinese government. They will do what is best for them, what serves their interests, the leadership and Communist Party, not because of our urging.
Can you speak to any specific incidents of, or examples of the State Department backing off, confronting China?
State Department has not do that yet, but I'm just troubled by some of the comments made by Special Envoy John Kerry. The comments made by Energy Secretary recently complimenting China's investment in green technology. They steal, they subsidize, they use dirty coal, and they enslave human beings. What kind of green technology investment that we're talking about?
Dr. Zenz, very quickly, I have just a couple of seconds left. Can you talk about how the CCP intimidates Uyghurs inside of the United States?
It does so through automated phone calls, at least in some countries. I don't know if the automated phone calls are also a thing in the US. With the embassy, the threat of not extending passports. And the CCP has an extensive strategy of surveying and intimidating dissidents of all kinds. And that's a big problem.
Thank you. My time is expired.